I was very moved when you reached out and asked me to be on your podcast. I am originally half Finnish, half Serbian.
And what I understand, you speak more than 7 languages.
My story really starts, I suppose, in Moscow. So, learning my fourth language, English, at the age of 5, to me, that is completely normal.
How much Irish can you speak? Because you spent some time in Ireland as well.
I'll be attending my 24-year high school reunion, if you can believe that. And I wanted to go as far as an airplane could take me. I can do anything. I can pick up my life. I can start over. I can pack everything up and go anywhere in the world, and I'm going to be fine. I say I'm a global citizen. I'm a citizen of the world.
I'm sure they will leave their comments afterwards if you don't say it properly.
And I am many things. I am Satu. Okay, let's get this done. Let's do it. No sense in wasting time. No sense in beating around the bush. And I love that.
A human mindset of, we used to live in tribes, and that tribe mindset is still there.
You're using the exact word that I just wanted to use. We're built for connection. I simply wasn't ready, to be very frank, but it did teach me some important lessons. So as of next week, this will be the longest I've been in one place.
You manifested Zoom for 2 years during COVID, and you got a job in Zoom.
You're not alone, by the way, in being afraid of sales. Many people are. The reason I love what I do and the reason I got into what I do is because big picture, it's making people better at their jobs. And that's it. That's what sales comes down to. Why you feel so enabled and so prepared for this one thing, but then not.
When somebody is giving me their precious time and their precious story, I just feel so overwhelmed that
coaching and mentoring business called Fearlessly First. One of my customers landed her dream job.
You help them to basically unlock that potential.
I thought about my message, and I thought about my audience, and I thought about what I've been through, who I am, and all of these things. So
what is your purpose of the life?
I think mine is
Hi Satu, how are you?
Hi, Kamil. I'm really well. How are you?
I am doing good as well. Welcome to the Cam MJ show. And I would say you are the first guest which I am trying to do the show online. So before we start, I want you to give a quick introduction. I know you from a professional perspective, but that's a long time ago. So I think a quick introduction would be good.
Thank you, Kamil. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity. I was very moved when you reached out and asked me to be on your podcast. And let's hope that technology is on our side today. That's something I'm very passionate about. So, hi, my name is Satu. I am originally half Finnish, half Serbian. I was born in Russia. I've lived in quite a few different cities and different countries growing up. And I currently live in Haarlem. I'm in the Netherlands with my dog. And I think you can see some some pictures of him there in the background. And I've been living here for about 8 years now, and I work for Zoom.
Nice. We will go into your days in Ireland as well. I want to explore more of your roots. You mentioned you are half Serbian, and you lived in multiple countries. And what I understand, you speak more than 7 languages, and we'll talk about that as well. But start about your roots. Where you want to start your story?
Any good story starts from the beginning. So my story really starts, I suppose, in Moscow, where I was born. That's where my parents met, and like I said, it's where I came into the world. So definitely a Russian connection there as well. We moved back to Helsinki, so to Finland, where I started daycare. I was a baby. I was roughly about 6 months old, and we lived there for 5 years. So some of my earliest memories are actually in Finland, in the forest, in the nature, being outside, being in the daycare with other kids. And then at around 5 years old, we moved back to the Soviet Union. My father was stationed there, and I started American International School in kindergarten, which I loved, by the way. I didn't speak any English because we spoke Finnish and Serbian at home, and my parents' first mutual language was Russian. So learning my fourth language, English, at the age of 5 in kindergarten was super exciting. Tough in the beginning because, of course, I tried to boss the other children around and they didn't understand me. But, we overcame that very, very quickly. I remember so many different things. My Canadian teacher in kindergarten, I remember making rock soup. We did all sorts of field trips. We were coloring, playing dress up. I loved it. I loved that experience. So, because that was my first introduction to education, I remember I had a best friend who was Japanese. There was children from Cameroon, United States, Japan, all around the world. Very, very international. That was my first experience. And if you think about it, kind of my only experience. So I've only ever known international communities, people from different cultures, different backgrounds. To me, that is completely normal. I was never in one place long enough with the same group of people long enough to experience that as being normal. So I think when we talk about formative years, I think that really shaped me as a person to kind of guide me as to what's normal.
So at the age of 5, you were exposed to three languages: English, Russian, and Finnish,
And Serbian, that's right.
and
So two mother
Serbian.
tongues,
Oh wow, four language at age of 5. So
that's right.
that's why you know a lot of languages. So before we go into more into roots, how many languages can you speak at this point?
So I can speak Finnish and Serbian. They are my two lingua maternas. I have two mother tongues, Russian and obviously English with you now as well. I learned French in school, Spanish on exchange and in Spain. And I did pick up some Hungarian in Hungary, but it's gotten very rusty, I have to admit, Camille. I wouldn't be able to hold down a political conversation or, do business in Hungarian. So very rusty. So six.
And how about now you are based in Netherlands?
I understand Dutch. So after 8 years here, it would technically, I suppose, be my eighth language. I can have a very basic conversation. I don't speak it very well, though. So I think it would be a stretch to say I speak Dutch. But
We'll, we will talk about how much Irish can you speak because you spent some time in Ireland as well. But that's a conversation down the road. So for your roots, talk a little bit more about your family. Do you have any siblings? How was you growing up? After you get to the international school, how was the life from there until you lived in Finland?
yeah, I do have siblings. I'm the oldest of three, which again I think shapes who I am and shapes my personality a lot. And I'm sure my sister and my brother, if they were on this call, they would tell you the same thing. I can be bossy. I can be quite the big sister sometimes, and that definitely shows in our relationship. So yeah, I have a sister 9 years younger, Sandra. She lives in the UK with her family, and my brother, who is 24, he lives with his partner in Finland. So all three of us are in three different countries. We kind of took that international upbringing with us, and we carried it on.
So after Finland, where the journey take you, which is as part of your roots, you travel extensively with your family. So talk a little bit about before you getting into a professional world, what was that life looks like? Your universities, where did you go to study?
So after Moscow, we were in Moscow for about 7.5 years. I was just going into middle school. We moved to Hungary. So we moved to Budapest in 1993, which was a very interesting time in history. It was after communism, and they were taking down the old communist statues, and it was a very interesting period to be there, for sure. And I started middle school, so I was just coming on to 13. I had just turned 12, and brand new school, brand new environment, everything. And we ended up living there for about 7 years. So that's where I started to go out with my friends, really became a teenager, and learned how to drive. So I have very fond memories of Budapest. We actually have a reunion coming up next month. So this summer is 50 years of the American International School in Budapest. So I will be attending my 24-year high school reunion, if you can believe that. We were class of 2000.
Nice. That would be something to look forward to.
Definitely. Yeah. Seeing everyone after almost a quarter of a century later is really exciting. A little nerve wracking because obviously I haven't aged 24 years since.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Graduated high school in 2000 in Budapest, moved back to Finland in 2000, and did some odd jobs, just made ends meet, applied for university at the time, didn't get in first time around, which now in hindsight I can say was very character building. At the time, it was, of course, devastating. But I attended Helsinki School of Economics in the Mikkeli campus, so a bit up north from the capital. and I did it in English. It was an English language program. So my K to 12 academic experience had, of course, been in English. So that's, that was always going to be my preference to study, to keep studying in English. Uh, did a 2.5 year program for my bachelor's in business. So I studied international business at the time. And part of that experience, to get credits, you have to do an exchange abroad. And I wanted to go as far as an airplane could take me, Camille, as you can imagine. So I ended up in Hermosillo. I was in the state of Sonora in Mexico in 2003.
That's not far at all.
I tried New Zealand, I tried Hawaii, but the school wouldn't, they didn't want to sponsor that. So
Yeah. Okay. And you mentioned you moved few countries. Was that your father's profession which make the family move?
yeah, yeah, he worked for an airline
Okay.
during that time. So that's that's something that took us to so many different countries. And of course, I'm grateful for the education that I've had. As you can imagine, American international schools are just the best education, in my opinion. So I really loved it. I loved going to school, and I loved my classmates, loved all the teachers.
Nice. And is your siblings going through the same process of studying in the same school?
Yes, in
Okay.
Warsaw and in Budapest for a few years. So similar experiences.
Okay. So if you now look back to how the family was moving because of the job of your father, and you get to experience which a lot of people nowadays experience when they go to a professional career, that okay, let's move to America for a few years and learn the culture and learn the environment and move to Asia. You learn that element very earlier in your age, which you probably not be thinking is going to help me down the line, but at least as you were growing up and your siblings were growing up, that international experience, moving the countries, it kind of become a norm. And how do you feel about that, especially now you can easily move a country from one to another? How do you feel about your family going through that? But the other element is also where you build some friends over 2 3 years, and now you need to basically depart from those friends and go and build new friends, and that is sometimes a bit uncomfortable situation for a kid. So talk a little bit more about, if you remember those emotional, I would say not a roller coaster, but those emotional changes you're going through, like, oh, we have to move again, I just settled down in this country.
Yeah, it's a great question, right? It's a great point. So I think, like with anything in life, there's always two sides to every story. There's always two sides of the medallion, or it's a double-edged sword, if you will. I didn't want to leave Moscow, for example, when I was 12, 13. I didn't want to change. It's always difficult. But you're absolutely right that it does become normal. When you don't know anything else, you don't really question it. And I'm glad for the richness that it gave me, because it's not just the richness in culture and language. It's also the richness in being resilient, meeting new people, adjusting to any environment, whether it's new, whether it's a new school or a new city. It just gives you that, I call it elasticity, right? It gives you that flexibility of, I can do anything. I can pick up my life. I can start over. I can pack everything up and go anywhere in the world, and I'm going to be fine. And sometimes there are moments, I do catch myself sometimes when I'm traveling or working or meeting someone new, or I'm at a conference, or I'm giving a keynote on stage or whatever I'm doing, and I'm taken back for a second. I have that experience where it's like, oh yeah, this is completely normal. I grew up doing this. This for me is fine. I didn't know anything else. So I prefer to look at the positives of it. I prefer to be grateful for everything that it gave me. But for sure, it was tricky growing up. Yeah, it definitely wasn't easy. And the good thing again is I have friends all over the world. I have acquaintances and people I've gone to school with, that I've worked with, all around the world. So
Yeah, world is my home now.
I say I'm a global citizen. I'm a citizen of the world, not just one country. I wouldn't know how to
Absolutely.
define myself in any other
I
terms.
love this word, which is a global citizen. It's not like I'm a immigrant here or I'm going to move there or an expat. I think now the world where we have so much mobility, people just move so quickly, is more around global citizen. You don't stay at one place. Even I still call myself a global citizen because I can easily pack things and move because we just get so used to of doing it. But somebody who move first time in their life, it would be a challenge for them. But you learn these traits at a very early age of your life, where moving, packing, settling into new place is just become a norm for you.
Well, as a global humanity, right? I mean, we're all global citizens, whether you believe that or not, because I think, and especially recently and especially lately, we're seeing a lot of things like weather patterns, the ecosystems getting, that whether it's winds or rains or whether it's garbage and pollution, whatever it might be, doesn't just affect you locally where you are. It affects the other side of the planet. And we saw that with COVID, how quickly that spread. Suddenly, we were all in this together. It was a very global phenomenon that happened. And everything that happens to one person somewhere is equally as possible or as likely to happen somewhere else. So that's why I also like this global citizen, because I think as much as I understand that, of course, we're all immigrants, I think it separates us from that perspective. It separates us from that reality. So, of course, I'm an immigrant, but I was an immigrant already after I was born. So, I find it strange to label myself that, because we're all moving, whether for work, whether for love, some for environmental reasons. So, I think we're all global citizens to some.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, any story you want to share about when you were a kid, you know, growing up with your siblings? As you mentioned, being the bossy elder sister, um, were your siblings listening to you, or you always have fights? How was it?
I think I don't know how different it would be if they were on this call, on this podcast with me, Kamil, and if they would agree with
I am sure they will leave their comments afterwards if you don't say it properly.
what I will say is that we actually have quite a large age difference. So I'm 9 years older than my sister and 18 years older than my brother, which essentially means we're three different generations, right? We're three different completely. We had different experiences growing up, and we weren't as together and as close as maybe somebody who was closer in age, right? So even though we had the same parents, we didn't have that same shared experience. Um, yeah, like I said, I can be very bossy, very demanding, but we actually had an experience a few years ago where we decided to do a siblings reunion. For example, we took a trip to Rome. So all three of us flew into Rome and we just did a weekend. We stayed in a nice place. We had good food. So I think, like with anything else in life, I think relationships take work. They take patience. They take a lot of care and love, and you have to put in the time. So that's now us as adults. But growing up, yeah, I mean, it was adventurous and exciting for sure. Definitely. I can tell you, I had my first date with a boy when I was 13, and I have a photo from that night. We went to a concert. It was outside in the summer, and my sister is with me. She's with us.
uh,
I think it would be fair to say that growing up, everywhere where I went, my sister came with me.
okay, nice, good to hear. And just to talk a bit more on the roots element, you talk about global citizens and how easy it is for you to move around because you learn that. What do you think the values you have gained from your roots, especially from multiple countries you lived with your family? um, One is, you have some values from your parents, how they were when they were raising you as kids, as three of you. But also when you move around to different countries, there's the values and there's some local traits you pick up. What do you think resemble with you still at this point?
I think human beings, especially from a young age, we're quite like sponges. We really absorb, you know, things around us, our environment. So I think that's a really, really good question. What I would say is I love the combination that I am. I love the mix that I am. So Finland and Serbia, if you think about like Nordics and Balkan, one runs quite hot and one runs quite cold. And if you think about that combination, it makes perfect water. It makes perfect.
Yeah.
And I always like to say that I've won the genetic lottery. In that sense, I'm very, very lucky. I would say probably my in my work ethic, I can be quite Finnish, quite punctual, quite determined, very set on a set number of goals. But I'm definitely also very Serbian in my temperament. Definitely. There are things that I do in my life, the music that I listen to, the way I cook, and when I'm in Serbia as well, of course. So definitely both. I'm very lucky to be, a citizen and a member of both cultures. In terms of the other ones that I've picked up from, I mean, who doesn't love Mexican food, and who doesn't and I don't drink Guinness. I spent 4 years in Ireland, so I don't know how much I picked up in Ireland, but no, definitely. And here in the Netherlands, they're quite direct. So the Dutch are known for their forwardness and their honesty and their directness. I've come to appreciate that. I've definitely come to enjoy that, and you get used to it. I think after a while, everything becomes your new normal. So yeah.
Nice. So you do keep some element of the culture you born and brought up with, and you basically carry them with you pretty much all the time. Um, the one thing you mentioned earlier is about the resilience you build because of all the moves happening with the family, and I think that's one of the part of your roots is being so resilient and being able to take anything and everything. So I think that's something which you learn over time, um, along with being Finnish and being Serbian. So that's great. So let's move a bit more into your routes. So you finish your university in Helsinki, and where does that lead you to?
Yeah, and just to point out that you're right. I am Finnish and Serbian, and I am many things. I am Satu, so I think that's always the best way to introduce myself is to say I'm many things all at the same time. I'm Satu. So university, I finished university in Finland, and after I came back from Mexico in 2003, I graduated in 2004, and I started looking for a job. And I worked a little bit in Finland. I had many different jobs. In the meantime, I had worked for the Olympic Committee. I also worked in a casino as a croupier, so a lot of different jobs there. And I ended up getting my master's in Maastricht. So I came to the Netherlands to live and study for the first time, and did a master's in international business here in the Netherlands. And that was, I think, after I graduated with my master's, I didn't want to work in Finland. I didn't think it was a particularly strong labor market at the time. I didn't like the opportunities that were available. So, as you said, the values and the things that we take as normal, I said, okay, I'm just going to look outside. I'm going to look elsewhere for work. And there were jobs in London. So I joined, yeah, I had an IT sales job in London right after getting my master's. And I was in London for about a year and a half, I think, when the opportunity to move to Dublin for Google came along. So that was really interesting. And I remember my sister had just come to England to study, and it was I was a little bit on the fence of, do I really want to move again? And Ireland is different, and I wasn't sure. But I think an opportunity like Google only comes around once in a lifetime, so I decided to just grab it with both hands and move. So in 2008, in September, I started at Google.
So tell me a bit more about your 4 years in Ireland and Google here. What Irish traits you picked since you were here?
I have to say, much to my embarrassment, I didn't pick up any Gaelic, so I don't speak any Irish other than Sláinte, like everybody else who comes even for a weekend. But I have to say, one of the more memorable things actually is from my colleagues and the ladies from the Nordic team at the time. I was going through different situations and different challenges and adventures, and Ellen in particular, and some other people we worked with. I just loved their strength, their toughness, their resilience. They really very practical, very hands-on. Showed up at my house when I needed them with tools, bottle of wine in the other hand, like, okay, let's get this done, let's do it. No sense in wasting time, no sense in beating around the bush. And I love that. I really appreciated that at the time. So that I have very, very many fond memories.
Nice. And how was it working for Google?
Google was interesting. I remember when I joined and I walked up, I think, to the second floor, and I heard three different languages. It was like French and German and, Spanish, and people were speaking different languages. And I just remember feeling, I'm home. I've come home. This feels right. This feels natural, because working in the UK, working in a London company in a London office, it was of course mostly British people. So there, the person that had traveled the furthest, I think, came from the north of England, from York or somewhere, which is a few hours by train. And they were really considered the outsider. They were really like the foreigner. So that environment, in contrast, was very, very different to the international aspect of Google. Not to mention that at the time, I remember thinking, if you're ever feeling quite good about yourself or feeling like I've accomplished a lot or I'm quite smart, At Google, somebody goes, yeah, I did that, already a few years ago, or I started my first company when I was 14. I have an MBA, I speak Mandarin. And you're like, okay. So let's just say the bar was high. The bar was high.
And you touch on really good point, Satu, is even you are far away from home, but you hear the language which is you are familiar with or your home tongue. Even just hearing the language give you this piece of sort of a um, something around, give you some sort of assurance that I'm in a safe place, somebody around here who speak the language which I understand. So you get some sort of a security, some sort of assurance that, yeah, looks like I'm in the right place. And again, that's something which we take it for granted very easily. But if I hear somebody speaking the language I speak, I feel like, oh yeah, that's good, at least somebody's here who I can talk to. Or even though I can still speak English to everybody, but still it just give you this extra piece of assurance in your mind that somebody around here is from where I am from. It goes back to your values of roots, and it also goes back to this human mindset of, we used to live in tribes, and that tribe mindset is still there, even though you are far away from your tribe, but somebody from a tribe is there and you feel like I'm still connected.
I, Absolutely right, Camille. You're using the exact word that I just wanted to use. We're built for connection. We're wired for connection, which means even if people were speaking a language that I didn't understand, there was so much there that was bringing us together and that we had in common. Almost everybody in the staff were, from another country. They were expats. So even if we didn't speak the same language, we knew that we had moved for the job. And Google was so amazing at taking care of us. As you know, they're famous for not just the food and everything that they provide, but they wanted to make sure that all employees felt taken care of. So already from the first moments of when I was hired to the relocation, the temporary apartment, all of like the physical things, the office, the way they make you feel like you belong, I think at the time felt very special. So as I said, we're hardwired to find what makes us the same, not what makes us different. And I think we forget that sometimes. All we see is different looking people or different sounding people, or people who don't feel like us or who haven't had our experiences. But I think Google for me just was a continuation of my international upbringing. There were of course Finnish people there. There were Serbian people there. We even had a Balkan group at the time, I remember, that came together. There's always going to be clubs and communities of people who want to connect on similar themes. But I just remember thinking that this feels really good. This feels really, really good with all these people here who are so bright and so motivated and ambitious. And it was exciting. It just felt like anything was possible.
Yeah, yeah. And I just remember in one of the podcasts with Aloka, he talked about how important the people is, and you touch a bit about why, how come Google is so good employer, because they take care of the people. And again, very similar theme came out from that episode was, if you look after your people, people will look after your business. And I think that one of the core values where Google still stand is looking after your people, and people will look after the rest. Absolutely, matters a lot. So any incidents or any stories you want to share about Ireland before we move on? My second question to you would be, what made you leave Ireland?
Yeah. Um, it's Ireland always for me, Camille, was temporary. I knew that when I moved there, and that was always somewhere in the back of my mind. I hadn't planned, nor did I think I would stay in Ireland for terribly long. I never put down an anchor. I never put down any roots in Ireland. Never bought my own property. Was always renting. So when my time at Google came to an end, I started my own online marketing company. I started a business for myself. Tried to have a go at it to stay in the city, to stay in the country, to keep going. But when my relationship didn't work, so when that ended, and it felt like everything that was holding me to Ireland was also ending, I started to look for other options, and I started to look at other possibilities to see what else can I do, where else can I go. So what ended up happening in 2012, which for me was a very pivotal year, it was a very important year. And I like to joke, even the Mayans predicted that 2012 would be a big deal, as I think did the Egyptians. Um, Things had obviously not gone to plan, as I mentioned, with, just on every front at the time. And I applied for a working holiday visa for Australia. So at the end of 2012, in December, I ended up emigrating to Melbourne, where I would stay for a little under a year and a half. And that for me was a huge transition. And that was a really important and very special time of my life. So it was time to leave. So for me, Ireland was always temporary in that sense. Important, but temporary.
So before we talk about your short trip to Australia, talk a bit about the business you started. Um, what was that about, and why you think it didn't work out that time?
Uh, like I said, when it was time to leave Google, I was interviewing in other companies. Facebook, of course, was one of them. There's a lot of tech companies in Dublin. We were and are very lucky, obviously, to be in the sector and the industry that we're in. I couldn't connect with any of these companies. I couldn't connect with any of these roles. I remember, I'm not going to name any names. I do want to keep some some privacy here. I remember I was interviewing in one of the teams for another company after Google, and all the questions were the same, like we asked at Google. The whole structure was the same. The questions, and I saw the flags everywhere, and even the shirts they were wearing were exactly the same, just a different colored logo. I remember thinking at the time, and it just felt like it would be more of the same. And I had somebody I was working with in an agency in Finland at the time, because I was the relationship manager for AdWords in agencies, who had said, "Why don't you just go off on your own? We'll continue with you." And Google in that sense is like the house always wins mentality. So as long as they're serving ad space, it doesn't really matter, who is catering to that. Um, so I decided to give it a go. And in Ireland at the time, as you know, it was very easy to set up an off-the-shelf company. So I just decided, why not? Let me have a crack at it. I would say it didn't work out because I was too naive. I was, in many ways, I didn't know what I didn't know. I tried to do everything on my own. I don't think I took it particularly seriously. I think coming from Google and just my attitude and mentality at the time was quite immature when it comes to business and when it comes to being professional and dealing, with clients, with money, with invoices, et cetera, et cetera. So I simply wasn't ready, to be very frank. But it did teach me some important lessons, and it allowed me for the next 5 years, it allowed me to do what I did next, which was, to easily go to Australia, to easily go to other countries, and to run my own business from essentially anywhere. That really gave me the freedom.
No, but you learn a lot of valuable lessons. Again, as you said, you were naive. You don't know what you were getting into. Somebody said to you, go and set up your own company, and you go on without understanding what it entails. And running your own company and doing a job is very two different things. Absolutely require a lot of hard work, a lot of time, effort.
And
um,
discipline and
and
consistency.
absolutely, and you need to have the right mindset. Most important, right? So you can only do it for the sake of others, but if you are not in the right mind space, it's not gonna go for a long run. So move to Australia. How was it?
It was incredible. It was absolutely life changing.
Did you travel around like backpacking, or did you settle in one place?
We were lucky enough. I had some people join me, and we did a road trip. So we flew up to Alice Springs, and we hired a 4x4. So we did Uluru, so we did Ayers Rock, and then we drove along the coast back down to Melbourne. So yeah, we were very, very lucky. It's a spectacular country, absolutely beautiful, and like I said, it was life altering in every way. Piece of my heart is definitely there.
Okay, so you spent a year there and move back.
I did. So the working holiday visa is for 12 months. So 6 months you can work and 6 months you can travel in total. And I had looked for companies to sponsor me to find a way to stay, but it wasn't in the cards. So I came back to Europe in 2014 in the spring. And that was actually I got to spend some time with my grandparents, which turned out to be very, very very fortunate. My grandmother passed that following winter, so that summer of 2014, when I came back from Australia, I spent a few months with my grandparents in Montenegro, in their family home in Serbia with them as well. So I got some quality time with my grandparents before they passed.
That's good. And I think the timing was right there for you to come back, spend the time before things happen. So I'm glad you get to
Everything happens for a
spend
reason.
time. Absolutely, everything happens for the reason. Yeah. So where the life take you afterwards?
After that, it took me to a couple of different places actually. So I had spent some time in Poland where my parents were living. I was in Warsaw for a little bit because when I came back from Australia, obviously I'm a European citizen, but I didn't have residence anywhere. So after spending time with my grandparents, I was also in Finland. I spent some time in Finland, and then I had actually taken an opportunity to join a former colleague in Malaga in Spain. So in 2015, at the end of the year of 2015, I actually went and moved to Benalmádena, so down in Malaga. Yeah.
Any country you haven't been to? Because I keep making a list of, here you are in Melbourne, you are here in Ireland. So
Japan and Brazil are on my bucket list.
okay,
Those two countries, they are very much still on my bucket list. So yeah, I look forward to visiting. There's lots to do and lots to explore and still lots to see. So
okay. When did you started in Zoom?
in Zoom, I started in 2022. So February 1st of 22. I had been at Oracle before that. So after Malaga, I moved to the Netherlands. And actually, next week is going to be 8 years for me here in Holland.
That's a long time then.
It's officially the longest I've spent anywhere. So as of next week, this will be the longest I've been in one place.
Are you already setting up a new record for you? So is anything else on the horizon?
Uh, Life is constant change, so I'm open to wherever life takes me. So if the journey, yeah,
We'll talk about the future down the line, but let's continue with your life in the Netherlands.
yeah. So I moved to Harlem. The relocation agency was very lovely, and they found me this apartment where I was living for 7 years before I bought this one. And I started working for Oracle in 2016, in the spring of 2016. The company had set up a cloud center in Amsterdam, essentially, and they had hired people from all around Europe with different language skills, with different backgrounds, to help set up the cloud business for their SMB space. So as you know, Oracle is traditionally very enterprise and very on-premise. So this was a complete pivot from their traditional business model. And I think it paid off because I certainly learned a lot of valuable skills. I had some really great experiences. And it was essentially, make or break. Here's your laptop, here's your account list. Yeah, be successful.
Go get to the clients.
Go get the clients. Yeah.
Okay. And then you spend how many years with Oracle?
So I was in sales for about 3 years. So in 2019, in the fall of 2019, an opportunity presented itself to join the Oracle Sales and Partner Academy uh, to be a facilitator. So a facilitation role within EMEA, which meant, training, learning, development. And it was just a few months before COVID. So for a few very short months, there was a lot of traveling. We got to go to really fascinating places, Nairobi, Dubai. We had essentially the life of a flight attendant, just running trainings all around EMEA. And then, of course, COVID hit. So all of the trainings we were doing had to be moved online. They had to be moved to Zoom. So I think we all know where we were March 14th, 2020, when everything went online. I certainly remember that day. And I really became a fan of the technology. I became a fan of the product. I think the platform is amazing. I don't know about you, but I was doing engagements and birthdays, my boot camp, yoga, everything was happening over Zoom. It just became the new reality. It became the new normal. And did that for, yeah, I'd say probably just under 2 years. We were doing everything online, which has its good and its bad. Of course, you miss the human interaction. You miss normal stuff. You miss connections. And then the opportunity for Zoom presented itself end of 21, and yeah, at the start of 22.
So I would say you manifested Zoom for 2 years during COVID, and you got a job in Zoom.
Right? Yeah, I'm a fan. I don't know what else to say, Camille. I'm really. I remind people that as difficult as COVID was, and of course, it was. I'm not taking away from that. the pandemic we had 100 years ago, the Spanish flu, there was no technology. Like if you wanted to communicate with someone, you had to write a letter and then send it by post, and it would take however long. So even the fact that we were able to do, work and school and play and love and, just keep living, but online, like in a virtual setting, I took as a blessing. So the connection was still there, even from the people that we couldn't see and necessarily hug. So I'm grateful. I think that's kind of, that was my intention. That was the energy that I came with. Just super, super grateful.
Yeah. And then you moved to Zoom.
Moved to Zoom. Sales enablement. So I continued in the learning, the training, the development. So I started as a sales enablement head for the field in EMEA, February 1st, 2022. And I love to tell the story that on that day when I joined, they hadn't given me a badge for any office because the office had been closed for 2.5 years, and it didn't look like anything was going to open anytime soon. So right before that, actually, between Oracle and Zoom, I got my dog. So this puppy that you see behind me, he is a rescue from Greece. His name is Lummy. And for the 2 weeks that I had him before I joined Zoom, we were potty training and getting to know each other and getting used to each other. A lot of early mornings, a lot of sleepless nights. And like I said, I thought we'd continue working from home. But then I think 26 days, 27 days later, after I joined, the office opened in Amsterdam. Big party, big celebration, you can imagine. And it was also right before the war in Ukraine. So I always tell people this was, 23 days before Russia invaded Ukraine. This was a very different world when I joined Zoom. So now, of course, the economy is different, the market is different. 2 years later, with hindsight, when you can look back, things look very, very different.
So you were primarily working around sales enablement, sales training, that sort of role. So um, tell me a bit more about, because I am not a sales guy. So sales is a very new thing to me, and I'm still afraid of doing sales or business development. So explain in a simple way what exactly your role looks like on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And you're not alone, by the way, in being afraid of sales. Many people are, and rightly so, not because it's scary, but because it's difficult. So the reason I love what I do and the reason I got into what I do is because it's actually very, very difficult. I have a tremendous amount of respect and empathy for anyone who chooses to go into sales. Because I like to remind you that there is no university degree, there's no school, there's no program. No one ever teaches you how to be a sales professional. Life and experience and customers teach you how to be in sales. And one of my first and earliest jobs was in telesales in Finland. So when we moved back when I was 18, um, it was to call strangers and convince them to buy from me. I was selling magazine and newspaper subscriptions. So it's really challenging in that sense, to have that human element, to have that psychology, to have that perspective. So my day to day is big picture. It's making people better at their jobs, helping people, making sure that they have the right learning programs, that they have the right tools, essentially that they are enabled to be better at their roles. So what does that mean? Zoom is a medpic house. So we use medpic as our sales framework, as our same sales methodology. And essentially the head of field enablement for EMEA just makes sure that, that we have the vendors, that we have the strategy, the budget, that everything has been put into a timeline, that you know what you can expect in terms of your next, whether it's product updates, whether it's tools or sales training, whatever it might be, that you know what's coming and that you feel more confident and more comfortable to do your job.
So you help salespeople do their job better. Is that a simplified version?
Definitely.
Okay.
That's how I like to think of it.
And you are being provided with certain tools and strategies to help them. Is that right?
That's right. So sometimes we come up with our own strategy for what makes sense in EMEA, because as you know, for in American companies, strategy maybe sometimes is developed elsewhere, and we need to then translate it into our local region. And of course, there's a lot of different countries and nationalities and languages and values across EMEA, so it does need to make sense for everybody in this region.
Okay. And how do you measure success in your role? I believe when sales doing better, that means you're doing something right or you're training them well. Is that how you define your success?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, next week I'm attending a sales enablement summit. There's a conference here in Amsterdam for sales enablement professionals, and it's the second year in a row that I'm attending. And this is the question that is always the hot button topic. Everybody always wants to know, How are we measuring success? How are we tracking performance? How are we, um, so it's a much larger issue. It's a much larger question, definitely. But I always talk about change behavior and I talk about the Monday morning effect. So it's one thing to organize a training and it's one thing to try and teach somebody something. But at the end of the day, we are looking for changed behavior. We're looking for a different attitude and, people doing things differently. Of course, if you have optimized tools, you can track pipeline generation, you can track forecasts and close deals, and as you said, sales revenue. But I think essentially at the moment, there's no real effective way of proving causality, of proving cause and effect, and saying, we did this, so therefore X team is, Y% better or Y% more successful.
So the behavior thing which came to my mind is, you provide your team with tools and strategies, and here is the best way, and here are the tools to manage your work, and you train them to change the behavior, because sales is all about understanding the customer, and you need to basically get yourself in that same environment to understand the customer to more, I would say, a human level to a behavior level, because end of the day the decision is based on a behavior, it's not based on the numbers are there to support, but the sales decision or a sell decision is based on somebody triggering emotion within themselves. So um, this is my more question around measuring it, right? So if you train somebody to be more into a behavior part, um, basically you are changing their habit. How you not make sure that they don't go back to the old habits, and then you need to go back and train again?
I think, as you said, it's very human. It's a it's a human business we're in. Uh, what I would say is when you're able to understand the value of something. So it doesn't matter whether you're selling, as I said, magazines, cloud subscriptions, B2B SaaS products. Um, if you understand the value of it, the value that it will bring someone, the problem it will solve, the pain it will resolve, you're then able to communicate that value, right? So that's at the core. I think that's at the nucleus of everything that we do. So we ensure behavior changes when they understand. If we have effectively communicated the value of the proposition, the value of the product, because it's very easy to talk about blue widgets and red gadgets and this gizmo and this is 10 times faster and we're 6 times cheaper and and anyone will tell you, so what? Anyone can beat you on price, anyone can beat you on speed, anyone can, but what are you solving for me? What's the value of what you're talking about? And that's it. That's what sales comes down to. So if someone perceives the value, if you're able to communicate that value and express that, then that's how we make sure that our people are more effective. And that's the same in any company, in any business. And for anyone who tells you, oh, I'm not in sales or I don't do sales, it's not true. We're all in some form of sales. Everyone is selling themselves, every which way on any given day. So we're all salespeople.
And you're very true on the value, and I think the second thing which I resemble is the passion. So I run cybersecurity business and I do podcast, and my wife tells me always, you are so good in selling your podcast, you always have a guest line up. What about your
That's true.
clients for cybersecurity? You're not good enough. Like, I don't know why, but I feel like I can easily talk to somebody on the phone first time, and I can sell the podcast, and I can tell the value I am delivering through the podcast and why it is so important to me, and they can feel that there is a passion in me.
I have to say, I was very impressed with how you set up this podcast, everything you've done so far. I loved the preparation work, just every detail. Every detail. I can tell you love it. And I think you're right. I think it's clear that you have a passion for it. You're very good at it, obviously.
That's something I'm still exploring, and I'm trying to put my thought process of what I have gone through my podcast into my other businesses. Is if I can do the same thing in this, why I cannot do the same in the others, right? So one is about passion, but as you mentioned, there's a discipline has to be done, and I think I am not as disciplined as I am in podcast as compared to others. So it could be, I value people so much that when somebody is giving me their precious time and their precious story, I just feel so overwhelmed that I need to look after this person so much, because now they are giving me something valuable to them. So Satu, nearly 8 years in Netherlands. And what else is happening around your life? You have a dog, and now you are living in Netherlands. What is coming down the line, or any other side businesses or side hustles you are working on?
Yeah. So I do like to stay busy. I like to do a lot of things. I'm known for that, I think, and it's also what keeps me motivated and what keeps me going. So I did start a side business last year, last February, when the layoffs kicked off and all the reorgs were happening around me. I decided to pursue something that had been on my mind for a while. So I have a coaching and mentoring business called Fearlessly First, and it's something that,
I love the name.
thank you. Yeah, feel the fear, but do it anyway, is what I say.
So, what is the business about?
I help anyone achieve their professional goals. So if you have, again, whether it's resume building, interview tips, how to get a promotion, how to move into another career, into another job. So wherever you are in your professional career, wherever you are in your life, I've had some entry level people who just graduated who are looking for some tips on how to secure a job. Like I said, any development chats, how to progress in your current role, whatever it might be, I help people out.
I think with your experience, and you travel around the world, there's a lot of value you can deliver, especially to the new generation, where they are trying to find the way of, is that the right path for me, or is that not? And with a lot of information available to us, sometimes over information is confusing to people, and they cannot make a decision on what they want to do, because sometimes they like too many things. So I think guiding them in the right direction and giving them some life lessons from your experience absolutely help. And as I said, right, you've been doing very similar thing in your professional career of getting the salespeople to go and do their part and their job better. I think that passion lies very similar to what you're doing in your business.
It's really important, and especially you're right with the young people, the ones who have either entered university or have left university, who are at the very very start of their professional journeys. What I'm noticing and what I've realized is, of course, the pandemic, COVID impacted everybody tremendously. So this isn't about comparing. This isn't, one story is different or better than the other. But what I'm noticing with young people is they missed out on those key mentorships, on buddy systems, on shadowing, on entering the workforce, on making those connections. So I think you're absolutely right. I think any support or any wisdom that we can impart on them, or any way that we can help them kind of enter the workforce, or whether it's life experience, whether it's whatever it might be, I think is so supremely useful, because they missed out on a crucial 3 years where everybody else, previously might have been doing internships or might have just been out and about exploring. So yeah, I can definitely see a gap there.
And even like they miss out on a lot of human connections. Even in presence of another human, you learn a lot from their body language, from how they talk, how they behave. And I think this COVID and the remote working and being isolated give a huge gap, which is still getting filled slowly and slowly. Absolutely. So, any stories you want to share from your business, or any potential, I would say, your any potential customer get a huge benefit of you coaching them?
One of my customers landed her dream job.
Okay.
6 months, yeah. She works in a bank, and when she let me know, of course I was very happy, I was very pleased. She did all the hard work, of course, but yeah, she managed to secure the next level. So
So, without giving any names, maybe it's good for our audience to understand like how you take somebody from here is my goal, I don't know how to achieve, to somebody landing their dream job. What is that process looks like? Because there's a lot of words around business coaching, mentoring, but how exactly it works. So if you want to give maybe some sort of a snippet of, this is how my process is, this is how I bring somebody along the journey with me.
yeah, it really depends on the person. It depends on who they are and what they want to achieve and what stage they're at. The story I like to tell is one of, like, why even get a coach. So if you think about, my clients are all smart individuals, they're all professionals, they're all bright, ambitious, motivated people, right? So if you think about it, for me to provide value, It has to be something that either they hadn't maybe realized before, or just a different perspective. Spin the plate, as I say, look at things from a different angle, look at things from a different perspective. So world-class Olympic swimmers, for example, the difference between gold and silver medal, let's say, is I don't know, 0.1 of a second. A good coach will push you those 0.1. They will understand that, listen, even a silver medal in the Olympics, this is somebody at the very peak of their game, but this is somebody who wants those I don't know if it's 0.1 or 0.01, but anyway, it's the difference can sometimes be very, very small. But I always tell people that a good coach will not only understand you and support you, but will motivate you and will show you the ways. All the tools and resources are within you. So you are powerful. You have all the answers. You know everything. You're the one who's going to do the hard work. I'm just here to help you, to remind you, to guide you, whatever that process might look like. So it really depends on what that person wants to achieve. So we've had some people who are looking for a brand new career, a new job, whatever it might be. But in this particular instance, she was very motivated. She's very intelligent. She knew exactly what she wanted, and she is very systematic. She was very organized and very analytical. So in those kinds of instances, it helps to have a plan, and we always have a conversation around, okay, so why do you think this happened, or why do you think this didn't happen, or okay. And just that confidence piece, I would say, is super, super important. Just that motivation and that support of, hey, why don't you aim for that gold medal? Why don't you aim for that 0.0 of a second, for example, because you can do it. And here's why you can do it, because you've actually done it before. You swam the world record, you swam your personal best. You can do it again, and just aim for it. So, for example, if you don't have, let's say, all 10 job requirements, the skills that they're asking for that next level, or whatever it might be, for that goal, what needs to happen? What do you need to do to get them? Or will you have the confidence to go for it anyway, and then figure it out as you go along? So all of these types of conversations, some people like it more structured, some people want less of a plan, and just, it really depends.
People have a lot of potential they don't realize. You help them to basically unlock that potential and push them for that extra mile which they weren't even thinking about.
That's when you come on my website, that's what you see, is I help you achieve your goals.
Okay. I put your website details in the description when we um, launch this episode. And how can people reach out to you, or how do you engage with, let's say, new potential customers?
Either through my website or on LinkedIn. I have my services available on LinkedIn as well, and that's where I do get some people reaching out to me. I am also on an expat group in Harlem on Facebook, for example. It can be word of mouth, it can be through a webinar, through a conference. I am somebody who I love to attend TEDx talks. I go to all kinds of tech conferences here in the Netherlands and Amsterdam as well. So it really depends. I am a big believer that when someone is looking for answers or looking for something, that they will find it. I'm a big believer in that.
And you talked of something about the food earlier, and I usually ask my guests, what's your favorite food, Satu?
Probably a really good sandwich. So a really good club sandwich, or a really nice bread with, yeah, either cheese or hummus or avocado or something like that. That would be when I'm celebrating, I like to have really nice sushi. If it's a cozy night in, some pizza with a movie is always good. I love lasagna. Lasagna is always a comfort food. It's always a standard go-to as well. Yeah, it really depends. I love Thai food as well. Yeah.
So I learn a lot about the sales and the sales enablement part, and of course, your business around helping people explore their potential. So expect appointment from me because I do want to explore what is my potential. So I do want to have a session with you.
Thank you.
Just to finish off this conversation, Satu, what is the life lesson you learn and what you want to share?
I'm really humbled that you asked me that, actually. And Camille, to be honest, I thought a lot about my intention before coming on to this podcast. I thought about my message, and I thought about my audience, and I thought about what I've been through, who I am, and all of these things. So my message is, you can overcome anything. You can do anything, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from. You can achieve anything. You can do anything you set your heart to, not just your mind, but you set your heart to. Passion and purpose are super important. you can heal, you can, you know, you can do absolutely anything that you believe to be true, no matter who you are.
You talk about passion and purpose. Sometimes it takes lifetime to find your purpose. Some people lucky enough to find the purpose earlier in their life, and some goes up to 60, 70. And we have a lot of examples where finding a purpose of your life is a hard part. um, what is your purpose of the life?
I think mine is to learn how to love, to be myself, to be my most authentic self always, no matter what, in every situation. And it was always to learn life lessons and to have experiences.
Satu, we are going to conclude our conversation today. And I am so glad we had this afternoon chat on Friday, and get to know more about your story.
You never know where life is going to take you. If I've learned anything, it's that the world is small. Former colleagues, schoolmates, everything, everyone comes around. So you never know. One of my next trips that I have planned is actually to climb Kilimanjaro. So sometimes purpose comes in setting big, audacious goals and and I'm noticing that the process and the journey for how to get to that top or get to the top of that mountain is also very, very valuable. So you never know what experiences and nuggets of gold and of wisdom these podcasts are teaching you, Kamil.
Yes, great. Thank you so much for your time. And I am looking forward to meeting you in person next.
Thank you so much, Kamil. I appreciate it.